Hey, did you hear there's gonna be Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark sequel? Did you see the first one? Did you like it? I liked it. It was fun. Let's talk about it. It's specifically about the stories presented in the movie because everything happens like so fast, and by the end I found myself being very intrigued about the monsters. And because I know this movie is based on books and the books are inspired by urban legends told by people around the world, I decided to do some research to find out where these stories came from. We are just gonna talk about the stories we see in the movie because we don't want this video to be 5 hours long. So in order of appearance, let's start with Harold. The story of this ugly fella comes from an Austrian-Swiss folktale that has spread all over the world to the point that now scarecrows are seen as horror's typical monsters. All of this began when farmers found out a way of keeping intrusive animals out of their fields. They learned animals would stay away when humans were around, so they decided to create fake ones to scare them off. What they didn't count on was the fear these human-like figures would also provoke in humans themselves. The fact that they were made to protect the crops and make them seem like some sort of watchmen of the fields. And people started to see them as something symbolic and use them for their rituals to help land cultivation. All of this helped to create a certain reputation around them, and people started to believe they were actually alive. And to be honest, their physical appearance and the way they were hung up, making them look like corpses, didn't help them much either. So eventually, with the passage of the time, people started to tell stories about experiences they had around scarecrows. Doesn't really matter if they were true or not, because all of those stories helped to turn them into a worldwide urban legend. Now let's talk about the big toe. In the movie and also in the book, the story involves cannibalism. You know, there's this kid who eats a toe and then a ghost appears and says, "Hey kid, give me back my toe." The original story of this is a very famous folktale called The Golden Arm. It's about a man who goes in search of a wife, and after seeing plenty of women, he comes across with a young, beautiful, and very rich one with an entire arm made of gold. So it was love at first sight for him. Obviously. Even though he was way more in love with the arm than anything else, they live a very happy marriage until suddenly she dies. After the funeral and once the body was underground, he wakes up in the middle of the night, digs up the body, cuts off the golden arm and takes it with him back home. He thought nobody would ever notice, and nobody did, except for his late wife, whose ghost visited him the next night and proclaimed what it was hers. Originally, the story was not meant to be scary. It was actually created to teach people to be respectful to the dead and also to not be greedy. But it all depends on the way you're telling it. Mark Twain, for example, loved to tell this folktale and scare audiences just by making little pauses every now and then to create a suspenseful environment that would keep listeners at the edge of their seat and ready to jump out of them once the story reaches its end. The next story in our list is The Red Spot. This one is not only scary but also very disgusting. Ugh, just thinking about it makes me feel like... Ugh. I hate spiders so much. This is gonna be really hard for me to edit. Ugh, okay. Let's go. Unlike most of the stories in these books, The Red Spot is not very old. It is known to be during the 1970s when this story began to spread around Europe and the United States. Originally called the spider bite or spider seeing the tick, the story is actually not very different from the one presented in the film. A girl is bitten on the cheek by a spider, the spider lays eggs on it, the bite turns into a boil, and by the end we have hundreds of baby spiders coming out of the poor girl's cheek. Maybe it's because of my own fear of spiders that I totally get why this is one of the scariest stories to read and hear and see, especially when you have big cheeks like mine. I mean, there's plenty of room for spiders to grow a family. Anyway, what's the next one? Oh, the Pale Lady. You see, I know this girl is known for being one of the scariest, but for some reason I found her, like, I think she's cute. I mean, look at that. Look at that smile. She seems friendly. No? Okay. This one is neither a folktale nor urban legend. The story was actually inspired by a fragment of Augustus Hare's autobiography. And who was he, you might be wondering? He was a writer. That's all I know. Anyway, the thing is, there is this tiny part in his book where he talks about how his older brother told him about a dream he had, where an extraordinary figure approaches him and says his family and that he had died in India, leaving a big fortune without inheritor. Sometime later, the author finds out that they actually had a great uncle living in India. And even though there were rumors about him being very rich, nothing was ever confirmed. So yeah, the great uncle decided to make a cameo and say, "Hey folks, guess what? It's true, go get the money." So he showed up in dreams, just like the Pale Lady. And that's it. That's how her story was born. Have you ever dreamed about her? And if you have, how did that go? Next one, Mitai Dori Walker. This one is actually my favorite in the film. The whole sequence with the cop, I thought it was really cool. This one is based on an American folk tale called The Rash Dog and the Bloody Head. It's about a kid and his dog spending the night in a haunted house where they have a beautiful encounter with a bloody head that falls down the chimney, causing the dog's death. The story in the book is pretty much the same, but the end was modified to make it scarier. Originally, the ending was just the storyteller making a pause after the dog dies and then just going like, boo! You know, classic jump scare. But the kids were not having it. They were just like, is that it? What a bummer. It was actually two 12-year-old boys who suggested the author to change the ending, and he did. So he added the part where the head stares at the boy, slowly opens its mouth and... Yes, it is always a jump scare. And the last one, the haunted house. We all know haunted houses. Some of us even live in one. So the author had many resources to inspire himself, but at the end he decided to use a story from another book called American Folktales and Songs. It's about a priest who spends the night in a haunted house where he encounters the ghost of a young woman, and she asks him to go find her bones and give them proper burial so she could finally rest in peace. The tale in both books is exactly the same, but it's almost entirely different from the one we see in the movie. The only thing they have in common is the ghost with unfinished business among the living. And if you think about it, this is the reason why we think every ghost sticks around. You know, like we think they want to say something or do something before they could go to heaven. So it makes sense they decided to put this tale at the end of the movie because this is the classic ghost story. That's all for now. If you like this video, please let me know in the comment section below and subscribe so you get to see more videos like this. You can also follow me on social media where you will find me as Denise McCool. Thank you for watching and see you next time!